Hi, my name is Babak Siddiq, and I'll be your host for today. And this is Peak Performance Coach Katie Proverell. Today we're going to be talking about peak performance with a specific emphasis on sports. So can you please tell us exactly what is peak performance, especially with the category of sports?
Well, peak performance is being able to achieve your full potential throughout your training, as well as in the moment when you're competing, when you're in a meet, and you want to do your very best at that moment in time. It's really excellence on command is what I like to call it.
And how do you coach some of your athletes to attain this state of peak performance?
A lot of my athletes, most of them right now are actually teens, I work with them throughout the whole competitive season, throughout the training, and I really see them as a whole person. So I look at their whole life, what's happening in school, what's happening in their family, so that we find a way to get rid of anything that might be getting in the way of peak performance. So my overall philosophy is like, there's this amazing peak performer inside, and we're just pulling away the things that might be getting in the way, drawing back the curtain, and then it just comes out naturally. So it's not about adding anything, it's about just letting what's already there come out.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And then what are some specific things that you have done for your athletes to help them achieve peak performance?
Well, in the programs that I do with athletes, I focus on, I would say, 4 key things. The first aspect is to know yourself. So I help them with their self-awareness, with who they are, with what's important to them, so that they understand why they're doing this sport that takes up so much of their time and their energy, and what their passion is about. And that really increases their motivation. And second of all, what I help them look at is to focus on what they want. So when we focus on what we want, it's impossible to be anxious. When we focus on what we want, we're motivated, we've got the end goal in mind, we're excited, we're driven. It's very clear, and it also helps us think really positively. Because positive thinking, sometimes positive thinking, it seems like it's sort of one of those things, like, does it really help? It so helps, because your subconscious mind is always eavesdropping on what you're thinking or what you're saying. Whether you think it or say it, it's the same thing to your subconscious mind. It takes it on as, oh, is that what you want me to do? Okay. So thinking positively by knowing what you want is another really key thing towards peak performance, because it helps you focus over the long term. The third thing is doing the work, basically staying in action. If you're committing to a sport, especially an individual sport, there is a lot of time, and sometimes you spend a lot of time by yourself, training alone, right? So you need to have this commitment, and when you've made that commitment to yourself and to your sport, and to the people that are surrounding you and helping you and supporting you, your family, your parents, your coaches, then that helps you move towards that peak performance state, because once in action, things are in action, stay in action, right? That's the law. So that includes also learning the skills, the specific skills for the sport. It includes learning how to manage your emotional state through breathing, through mental training that I also do, learning how to visualize. I do a lot of visualization and some hypnosis, learning how to get into a more alpha theta brainwave trance state where you can make deep changes, inner changes, and increase your motivation as well. And finally, there's a really important component that I believe in, which is to learn to release your expectation of the outcome, so that you're in expectancy. You have an expectancy of success, success being your participation, success being the journey, your success being the effort that you make. Therefore, you're not only focusing on, I want to win, and not doing what you need to do to win. You are in the moment, you're doing what you need to do so that you have the best outcome possible. And more often than not, you have a really great outcome when you take it from that perspective. So those are sort of the 4 parts that I look at. Know yourself, focus on what you want, commit, show up, do the work, and let go of the outcome. Focus on the process.
So how much of a mental game would you say is peak performance versus the physical aspect that people always tend to focus on?
Right. People do always tend to focus on the physical. Well, the physical is clearly very important. What I know to be true, and what in the 15+ years that I've been doing the mental aspect, I've discovered that really the mind runs the body. The subconscious mind has a blueprint of the body in perfect health and in peak performance state. So the mind is still sort of the unexplored territory, and there is so much power in the mind. It's amazing. I mean, I just find that, you know, the people I work with, when they really learn how to manage their mental state, create the emotional state that they want, then they create the state of mind and body, they get excellence on command. Snap their fingers, they do what they do when they want to do it. Then the body follows suit, as long as it's trained.
Yeah. See, what I've found is that when you do sports, you can have a lot of talent, but if you don't have the confidence
Right.
and the mental strength to translate on the field,
Right.
you're not going to see all your hard work that you've tried to attain in the gym
Right.
or at the track.
It goes together, doesn't it?
Exactly.
The mind and body really are one.
Now, I've heard of, well, personally, I've experienced being in the zone as an athlete.
Right. And what are the sports that you...
The sports that I played were basketball and football.
Okay.
And when I played basketball and football, specifically basketball, I would sometimes attain this state called being in the zone.
Right.
And I would describe being in the zone as a state where I'm acting without thinking,
Right.
but I'm thinking in the subconscious.
Right.
So I'm not thinking about thinking, but I'm just moving effortlessly and
Right.
flawlessly, and it's the state in which I achieve the most peak performance.
Right.
And I can actually notice sometimes in a game that I'll come back to a consciousness where I'll start thinking about my actions again. And as an athlete, I'll try to not think about my actions and calm myself, so I go back into the zone. So,
So you were able to get back into the zone
Yeah.
on command.
yeah.
Yeah. Once you really experience it and you realize that's what you're experiencing, then it begins to be something that you can come back to.
Yeah, Bill Russell, famous former NBA Celtics, described it as a state as being in a second gear where you perform flawlessly and you never knew you were there. So is there something you do as a peak performance coach to help athletes attain the zone better?
Yeah, well, I do a lot of that, and those 4 points that I referred to are really sort of the foundation. If you have those things in place, then you're well trained and you're well prepared. And then when it comes down to being in the zone in that moment, right before the game or right before the performance or right before the meet, there are some things you can do that will actually calm the nervous system, because if you're in a state of fear or you're anxious, it's because you're in that fight or flight. And actually now they say fight, flight, or freeze. Some animals in nature actually freeze when they're under stress, and it's their response to thinking that there's some threat to their survival. And it sounds crazy, but when we're nervous or anxious about a performance, there is a part of us, a primitive part of us, that is worried for our survival. So therefore, there are two parts of the nervous system. There is the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. And when we are under stress, the sympathetic nervous system gets activated. And so what we want to do is we want to balance so that we get the parasympathetic nervous system back into gear, and therefore the breath rate slows down, the pulse goes down, our body gets oxygenated because our breath is more efficient, and we can come back into focus. So there are some ways to balance the nervous system, to reactivate the parasympathetic nervous system. One of the key ones, the simplest ever, is simple belly breathing. Because if we start to activate the sympathetic nervous system, sometimes the breath comes up here, and we start to, that's when we hyperventilate, right? That's what leads to hyperventilation. So the first thing I tell my clients is bring it into your stomach, bring it into your belly. If you have to just put your hands on your belly and breathe into your belly, it automatically, there's more space for breath, therefore your breaths become longer, and the longer the breath lasts, the more relaxed and more focused you are. So that's just a basic thing. I bring everybody right back to breathing, belly breathing.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
And I've also read books such as The Zone Diet by Dr. Barry Sears.
Right.
It's a diet where he prescribes to his athletes to attain the zone better, and it's basically supposed to help them achieve better focus.
Right.
So do you think the zone diet is necessary for athletes, or is just another way of attaining the zone?
I think there are a lot of ways of attaining the zone. It's another piece that plays into it. Your nutrition and what you eat is a hugely important piece.